Vanuatu, in my opinion, is one of the most fascinating countries on the planet. The country provides a fascinating example of cultural collision between indigenous traditions and the influences of colonizers. But this story about Vanuatu isn't just about a distant odd culture. I believe it teaches us something about ourselves as a species. I think in a way, it shows how deeply human it is to seek understanding and meaning, especially when encountering something so foreign and seemingly inexplicable. But anyway, let's start with some geography. Vanuatu is a Pacific island nation with a population of about 300,000 spread out over 83 islands, located about 1,750 kilometers east of northern Australia. The nation has a total land area of approximately 12,000 square kilometers, spread out over a vast ocean territory. What the country is best known for, and the framework we'll use to explore the history and culture of Vanuatu, is its cargo cults, a term used to describe religious movements that arise when indigenous peoples encounter technologically advanced outsiders. While there have been various cargo cults across the islands and their activities are dwindling, they remain a fascinating window into Vanuatu. One of these cults venerates Prince Philip as a divine figure, believing he is the son of an ancestral spirit destined to bring prosperity. The belief likely emerged during the colonial era and was reinforced when villagers saw photos of him with Queen Elizabeth II. Rather than denying their belief, Prince Philip acknowledged their devotion by sending signed photographs and gifts, including a photo of himself holding a locally made staff, an act requested by the villagers to confirm his connection to Vanuatu's island of Tanna, which further deepened their reverence for him. But the cargo cult I want to focus on in this video is the John Frum movement, located on the island of Tanna, one of Vanuatu's southernmost islands. The movement is centered around the belief that material wealth or cargo, like food, medicine, and technology, can be delivered from the spirit world or advanced outsiders, such as Americans. Followers of the John Frum movement often engage in rituals that imitate the behavior of Western military personnel, like marching in parades, raising the U.S. flag, and building land strips in hopes of attracting the return of John Frum, who is believed to bring this cargo. They even have an annual holiday. On the 15th of February is John Frum Day. The identity of John Frum is ambiguous. Some say he was an American serviceman before or during World War II, while others believe he is a supernatural figure. Some claim to have seen him in visions. This man is one of the historical chiefs of the John Frum movement and is one of the few that claim to have seen John Frum. It was in a dream, and Frum was a cat with a human voice. The cult is believed to have been started around the late 1930s at the latest, though its exact origins are debated. Others suggest it fully emerged during the war when American troops arrived in Vanuatu. Over 500,000 U.S. service members passed through Vanuatu during the war. The movement gained significant momentum during and after the war when the local population saw the sheer volume of goods being brought by foreign military personnel. Having no prior exposure to such material wealth, they attributed the arrival of goods to divine or supernatural forces. In 1606, Spanish explorer Pedro Fernández de Quirós landed in Espiritu Santo in Vanuatu, naming it La Australia del Espiritu Santo, because he believed he had found part of a mythical southern continent called Terra Australis, a myth that dated back to the ancient Greeks, and he had a vision to establish a Christian utopia in the Pacific. Espiritu Santo meaning Holy Spirit. It's now known as just Espiritu Santo, and it's Vanuatu's largest island. Captain James Cook was the first European to visit Tanna, arriving in August of 1774 during his second Pacific voyage. There was little sustained contact with Europeans until about 100 years later, when European missionaries began to establish a significant presence. In 1906, the island was jointly colonized by both France and Britain. Called the New Hebrides Condominium, it was one of the most peculiar colonial systems in history, featuring parallel legal, administrative, and language systems with separate courts and police forces for each colonial power, often creating confusion and inefficiency. This was the system until 1980, and the colonial powers, in collaboration with Christian missionaries, outlawed many of the local traditions, including their religious practices and customs. One such custom was the consumption of kava, a traditional drink with mild hallucinogenic properties made from the root of the kava plant. Kava holds cultural and spiritual significance and is used in ceremonies to foster community and connection with ancestors. This is where the movement is believed to have originated. The movement is seen by many as a form of resistance to the growing influence of the Christian missionaries and colonial authorities, who were attempting to reshape the traditions and culture of the indigenous people of Tanna and nearby islands. In the early days of the movement, John Frum was said to have told the islanders that if they rejected Western influence and returned to their traditional customs, he would bring them material wealth and prosperity. After World War II, when the American military left the islands, the John Frum movement persisted, even though the much-anticipated wealth was still yet to materialize. Many islanders maintained their faith, believing that John Frum's return was still imminent. It's unclear how many members of the movement there are today, but a 2015 documentary suggests the number may be as few as 250 active worshippers, as this is the population of Lamakara, the last village still adhering to the movement. This village was established following a religious split in Sulphur Bay, which had been the center of the John Frum movement, with as many as 5,000 followers as late as the 1990s. But this all changed when a man from the village named Fred returned from a fishing trip and claimed to have seen Jesus in a vision, who told him to return to lead the people of Sulphur Bay to Christ, and that Siwi Lake, just west of the village, would overflow and destroy their village. In the early 2000s, there stood a small church just outside Sulphur Bay on a rocky hill. One night, the pastor was inside when a young girl came to inform him that a small stream had begun flowing through the village. Curious about this unusual event, the pastor went to investigate. As he reached the newly formed stream in Sulphur Bay, he suddenly heard his church bell ringing frantically, as if signaling a warning. Alarmed, he rushed back to the church where he found it filled, not just with a few Christians from the village, but also with members of the John Frum movement, all drawn by the sound of the bell. The entire village had gathered. At that very moment, the waters of Lake Siwi broke free and rushed down the valley, flooding the village. Homes were destroyed or filled with silt, and livestock was washed out to sea. Yet despite the destruction, no lives were lost. Everyone was safe inside the church. The pastor asked the crowd, who rang the bell, but no one knew the answer. To this day, the mystery remains unsolved. This event, while devastating, brought an unexpected blessing. The village, which had long struggled with the lack of fresh water supply, now had a permanent source. Fred's prediction, along with the church bell ringing that saved the villagers' lives, instantly resulted in the conversion of over 4,500 of the approximately 5,000 villagers to Christianity. The leader of the Frum movement in Sulphur Bay, Isaac, left and formed his own village, Lamakara, with the followers that remained. It's likely the Frum movement is still alive today, though it's probably slowly dwindling. Local pastors report people regularly converting to Christianity, and others are leaving the Frum village for work. There has not been a publicly available update, or at least one I can find, in almost a decade. Modern influences have also contributed to the decline of cargo cults. Between trade with other nations, tourism, and over half the population now having access to the internet, globalization is reshaping Vanuatu's culture, economy, and connection to the wider world. This also puts the nation at a crossroads, confronting the opportunities and challenges of an interconnected future while striving to preserve its traditions and unique identity, as well as carefully balancing the growing influence of its Christian faith with a commitment to safeguarding its cultural heritage. And that's all for this video, but before you leave, I want to quickly share with you a project I've been working on. I've been learning Spanish for the last year, but I've had a problem finding interesting content to read at the lower fluency levels. Almost every source out there are boring stories or children's books. So I created something I wish I had months ago. It's a website filled with content I'm interested in at the beginner to intermediate levels, and I can only assume since you're watching this video, the topics would be interesting to you as well. Right now, everything is completely free if you want to check it out. There will be paid features in the future, but more on that later. Type in notboringspanish.com or click the link in the description. Thanks again for watching. See you in the next one.